Hey, what is up everyone? Welcome back to another review, and today I'm taking a look at the Reborn 100 Nightingale. This right here is Char Aznable's mobile suit from the novel version of Char's counterattack called Beltic Tora's Children. We've seen this on here once before in the high grade format, but this is the Reborn 100. 1/100 scale, the same as a master grade kit, and this thing right here is a behemoth. Now, it's difficult to say sometimes what you're going to get when it comes to a Reborn 100 because it is kind of an unusual line. But all I can say is in the end, I'm very happy with this. It looks phenomenal, it's really cool. I haven't gotten around to top coating it just yet, and everything besides the panel lining I've done is what comes inside of the box. So it was the first one. The line mightn't have lasted too long, but it's still an awesome model kit, albeit a little bit of a statue. But yeah, anyway, let's start off by winding it back a little bit to the build. So this right here is one of those colossal sized boxes, the kind you'd see with an old school perfect grade. Now if you want to see everything that comes inside this box, I did do a unboxing video if you want to check out all of the plastic. But as for the actual build, this thing is extremely simple. Think of a high grade, not even a new high grade, more of an older high grade, just scaled up with a kind of unique set of polycap joints. Now these right here are the polycap joints in question. When it comes to the build of this, these are in pretty much every joint. There's only two types in here, maybe there's three actually, 1, 2, and 3, but predominantly we use just the big old one that you see repeated all over this runner for pretty much every joint in the kit. Of course, this was a cost-saving measure by Bandai. By doing the same thing over and over again, it reduces production costs. But when it actually does come to the overall finished build kit, this does weaken a lot of them. One thing that's always really been an issue across the Reborn 100 line is the fact that the kits aren't that structurally sound out of box, so they will need a little bit of work in order to be. Thankfully, this kit right here doesn't move around too much, but I have had it fall apart on me a couple of times already, which isn't great. Build-wise, it is incredibly simplistic. The overall thought behind a Reborn 100 is they're meant to look like a master grade on the outside, but be super simple and, like I mentioned, cost-effective on the inside. So mainly we've just got a whole bunch of armor parts. The only kind of inner frame-ish parts are what you'd see on a high grade, which would be the joints. The joints in particular being that kind of a bag or material kind of look, as in the joint is protected against debris, in a kind of Gundam Thunderbolt kind of way. The internal structure when you're building this up is super simple. It's only what needs to be there, no more. And building parts up is the usual kind of two-piece attachment. For example, the lower leg, it's mainly just two pieces and a front bit. The upper leg, two pieces. Everything is just kind of cut into the smallest amount of parts possible. Some parts in here are absolutely huge, like the butt flap as well as the big shoulder thrusters, but we do have some smaller sections to attach into this. Now, speaking of thrusters, this is something you're going to want to really like with this kit because you have to build vernier after vernier after vernier after vernier. Thankfully, they are nice verniers. They've got an outer grey cup and an inner yellow cup, so it does mean they are nicely color separated for if you want to straight build it, or if you're going to custom paint it, it's nice to have two actual separate pieces to paint up. But yeah, there's a whole lot of verniers in here, and speaking of a whole lot, like I mentioned, you've got the same joint in every part. So you're going to be building the same little joint, pushing it in, and the only kind of difference with these polycap joints from each other is the orientation. I'm not sure what kind of difference this makes, but make sure to pay attention to the orientation when putting it together because there's certain lines through and on the sides of these joints that apparently you do have to orientate the right way. At the central aspects of this kit being the waist unit and the upper body unit, we do have some nice grey sections that kind of mimic inner frames, showing the internal detail of the kit. These are very detailed when it comes to molding, not quite when it comes to color separation, so again, might be something you might want to detail up yourself. Overall, if I was really going to say one thing about the particular build on this kit right here, you'd almost consider this more old school model kit. Sure, what you get in the end is something that is fully color separated for the most part, but the overall plastic quality and the overall detailing on it isn't the greatest, and also the structural integrity isn't great either. These are all things that if you actually paint this kit up, will kind of go away on their own way. So if you paint it, it will look more fancy. If you add some detailing, it'll be more detailed. And usually the painting and top coating tends to thicken parts up, so the joints will hold a little better. So although this is a kit that is technically complete out of box, compared to master grades and some new high grades, it doesn't feel as complete when finished. And speaking of when it was finished, this is what it looked like right out of box straight built in case you want to see. I did do a couple of things to it, not really a lot, but out of box it does look a little bit plain, especially all of the big red armor panels. So all I did with this kit was I did panel line it using flow type panel liners. There's not a whole lot of detail on it, so this was a quick enough job and definitely is worthwhile, bringing out a lot of hidden detail. The second step I did is I just decided to use the stickers that were in here because I noticed Bandai did cut them quite close to the actual detailing on them. They are sticker style decals, but in the end they're not really that bad. I had planned on top coating this as usual in matte, but again the humidity is all over the place and I didn't get it done in time for the review. I might throw it together at the end, we'll see. But now that it's complete, let's take a look at it. And that right there is the 1/100 Nightingale in all of its glory. This thing is absolutely massive, and I'm just seeing it right there on the camera, and it looks incredibly incredible. Now, like I mentioned, I did put on some of the stickers, I did panel line it a little bit, but otherwise you get something fairly similar out of box. I really recommend getting those tiny little panel lines. There's not a whole lot of them, but all the little bits of detail highlighted up or detailed enough up so you can actually see each and every one of them to make sure you've got all the various little bits of detail that are on there popping, because otherwise they will be entirely lost. And again, I'm a little bit shocked by how decent the stickers turned out, besides this one right here on the chest. So when it comes to the overall aesthetics, what can you really say about the Nightingale? It's definitely ridiculously unique. It's not really like anything else. If you ignore the wing binder sections around back, it's almost triangular shaped. From the side, it's got a really cool kind of almost aquatic kind of feel to it, and it's got curves and spikes everywhere, which just gives it that full Xeon feeling. This, of course, is the ridiculously over-the-top, almost alternate reality version of the Sazabi, and it is off the charts cool. So when it does come to the detailing on the Nightingale right here, it can really be summarized into a few kind of aspects. The kind of little details in the armor, which tend to be like little rivet-y kind of effects, as well as some panel lines. When speaking about those rivets, there really are only some that are actually color separated up here on the actual back. Those are coming through from the underlayer and they do look incredibly impressive. Next up, of course, this thing is absolutely covered in verniers. And the fact that Bandai actually did color separate them into the yellow and grey does mean that they do pop. They're everywhere, they're up on the shoulders. I will mention that lifting this up is a little bit on the dangerous side because it can fall apart a little. The joints aren't that strong. So we do have the verniers there, down here like there, and here as well. The next thing is, of course, fuel tanks. We've got some fuel tanks underneath, and we've got some fuel tanks around on the back right here to make sure that this, well, obvious gas guzzler of a mobile suit can get what it needs to do and, well, do what it needs to do with all those verniers. And the last kind of aesthetic kind of, to say, detail that we see all over this, it's spikes and curves. Everything is super curved here, around on the back, and of course we've got the different spiked aspects like up on the head on those antennas. There's a whole lot going on. Everything's got a little bit of a curve and a little bit of a spike. So when it comes to the other detail around this, Bandai did color separate this incredibly well. Like down to the little various thrusters or outlets around on this everywhere. Everything's got at least a bit of grey or a bit of yellow, so it's very nicely done. We've got the kind of material that is inside of the joint aspects, which has a little bit of a folding through it. A lot of these do have little seam lines in them because they are just two parts attached together, but nothing too bad either. Very nicely done. So the only actual sticker that's used on the mobile suit itself is that little bit of a green one on the mono eye in there, which is very, very simple and effective. And speaking of effective, that little clear section all around it really does give it a premium kind of look. I'll also mention that this is one of those kits that does have light piping going on in it, and you can use one of those old battery-operated gunpla LED units to get a little bit of a light effect going on inside of it. Overall, the detailing is really impressive. I especially like what is going on in here. We've got some nice pipes and whatnot molded into the sides of the actual interior aspects. This pipe has been done quite well with a little bit of a ridge in it, and overall, pretty cool. Honestly, it does seem like Bandai did go all out for the first Reborn 100. So this right here is a kit that does have those perfect grade style posable hands. Now, one of you guys mentioned in the comments that this does kind of mean that this kit can't really hold on to its weapon. I haven't actually tried out just yet, but that would be par for the course for these sort. They are nice though that you can actually pose them up a little bit, but sometimes they do loosen up a little bit and the fingers can be quite problematic sometimes and like to fall off a little bit, sadly. We do have some nice little cannons right here in the sides of the chest, again color separated out simply but effectively. And we do get a sheet of sticker style decals in here as well. Now I did use the, well, vast majority of them. I don't know which ones I didn't use, but I did use a lot. For example, these red ones here are for the canisters underneath the armor round back right here to kind of do that little bit of a red ring you can see right here. I didn't really see the point in doing that because you can't see them most of the time. And this right here, these symbols, well, these are a choice. So you can use these ones or the ones that are on it. I went with the ones that are in the manual. So basically there's one up on the chest and there is one on the shield as well. Now, overall, the stickers on here are quite nice. They're cut quite tight when it comes to the detail, or should I say the kind of iconography sort of ones. The square ones do have a definite square border around them. Hopefully this will be combated when I do give it a little bit of a spray down with a matte top coat, but for the most part they're not too bad. Some do stand out more than the others, like the ones up on top of the shoulder sections. But like I mentioned, the ones that are kind of a decal or icon don't seem to have too obvious a one around them. The only real killer I found was this one right here in the chest. Now this happens a lot when it comes to stickers on curved surfaces. If this was a water slide decal, you could actually kind of cut it, use a little bit of mark softer or microsol or something like that and make it adhere to the area. But when it comes to these sort of stickers, there isn't really any way to avoid this creasing running right through it. And it does kind of feel like it may cause it to detach over time. You could cut a little bit of notches into it in order to try and combat that, but overall, they're okay, not fantastic. So jump now into a bit of a size comparison, and there it is beside a 1/100 Gundam, that one right there being the Master Grade RX-78-2 3.0. So as you can see, the Nightingale is one huge mobile suit. So during the unboxing of this video, I did ask you guys what you'd like to see in this video, and it seems like size comparisons or comparison seems to be the main thing that you want to see. So first off, Surikoma60 wanted to see this beside the Master Grade High New Gundam Verka, because of course they're from the exact same novel. The way that the Nightingale is the variant of the Sazabi, this is the variant of the new Gundam. Not quite as big as the new Gundam when it comes to Master Grades. And speaking of which, I'll throw the new Gundam in there as well, just without that annoying fin funnel wing round back, and that is both of the new Verkas. Next up, Frosty Fennel asked to compare this right here to the Sazabi Verka. So a little bit of a quick comparison there. They are side by side. The Sazabi almost is the same amount of bulk from the front. Of course, from the side, it's completely dwarfed by the giant back flap bit on the Nightingale. But seriously, wow, I'd absolutely forgotten just how detailed, over the top, and awesome the Master Grade Sazabi Verka is. I was taking a look at this Nightingale and going, it's not that bad, it's a pretty cool kit. It's kind of like a HG scaled up, and it has nice little detail here and there. But after looking at the Sazabi, I can see why back then I was a little bit like underwhelmed by the Reborn 100 line in general, when we were getting Master Grades this ridiculously awesome. And just so you know, this kit we're looking at today, the Nightingale, came out in 2015, the Sazabi came out in 2013. And finally then, when it comes to comparisons, a lot of you guys did ask for a comparison between the newer high grade and this older Reborn 100. Now I've got the high grade up my shelf, I have it here all of the time pretty much for video comparisons, and these are completely different beasts, not just in scale, but in design and as well as in engineering. Now, without a single doubt, the high grade has the Reborn 100 beat on pretty much everything but size and maybe the thrusters up in the shoulders. But besides that, the high grade is the vastly superior kit. Now, I will mention, two parts have already broken on my Reborn 100, so be careful with it, it's brittle as shit. So one thing I do find incredibly funny is there's a lot of design elements that are just different for, I guess, the sake of being different. For example, this has a little bit of a bend in these antennae up on the head. When you take a peek at the high grade right here, it does not. These are completely straight. The torso right here on the 1/100 has this nice little bit of an overhang, which gives an almost pointy bladed feel to the upper body. When it comes to the high grade, this is just a point. There isn't really an overhang. It's thrown a bit of a shadow there because of the seam, but there is none. It's just straight up, almost like the front end of a plane. Interesting. Also, I will mention this does have these little kind of rivets coming through in more places than just the back, and this design on the shoulder sections is gorgeous. It's almost really pointy and flared out. We do not have yellow parts inside this, the high grade, by the way. I'll throw that in the corner so you can see. And when it comes to the Reborn 100, up here we do have only kind of recessed detail there. We do have yellow inside of the thrusters, and these are flat, not the same nice kind of points that we'd see on the other version, which makes it look a little unfinished. I'll also mention inside of this joint right here, I did notice there's a little bit of a kind of flap tab kind of thing. Now I wonder if you can actually cut this off. There's probably lots of information about it right now, I just don't know if you can just cut it off and actually get this to move up and down. No clue, but it kind of looks like you can. But one of the largest differences, of course, is this back panel back here. This is absolutely huge compared to the actual mobile suit itself. We also have nice, well, I nearly said red, yellow detailing inside of all of these with the thrusters. Overall, it is very nice. And the crowning majesty of this is we do have actual functional sub-arms underneath here, which you can actually fold out. I'll throw a bit of old footage up right now so you can see what that looks like when it's actually doing that. And if we fly on back to the Reborn 100 ride here and flip around to the back, the butt flap is very long compared to what we would have seen. It's not as big compared to the robot. It's not that much larger than the actual high grade one right here. I mean, like physically, it's not that much larger than it. But yeah. Also, we don't really have the nice kind of layering here, but we do still have nice layering of the gray, yellow, and red. And I don't know why, if it's just me, but this part sometimes falls out when I'm just moving the kit around, except the one time I actually tried to show it. Maybe it'll happen a bit later on. So now moving on into the accessories, and at first glance it might look like there's not a whole lot in here, but it is worth mentioning that usually a standard kit cannot cover this box right here with equipment. These, well, there might be a lot of it, but they are huge. What we've gotten here is the shield, the Mega Beam Rifle, as well as the Heat Tomahawk. So first off, I will mention there are no hand options inside of this box, so it is just the posable hands that you do get in here. So there is no fixed pose hands for holding onto weapons, which... Okay, yeah, there's no fixed pose hands to hold on to any of the weapons, which sometimes is a little bit of a letdown because these hands can be a bit funky. Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. So that right there is what happens with this kit, these one-size-fit-all joints. Like, even when it does come to this section right here, it's just so janky and floppy. I feel like I want these to be up here. I think that would look so nice. But they always kind of drop to a really kind of limp zone. And this kind of happens with this kit a lot. I moved around, and sometimes the legs will just flop off, or the arm falls off. That's what these kits have always been like. The more you actually move the little aspects of it, the more you're kind of unscrewing the joints a little bit, and eventually they just pop off. So it's worth kind of, well, seriously, it's worth kind of just leaving it be, setting it up and leaving it be. So the first of the weapons in here is the Heat Tomahawk. Now, as you can see, the plastic quality on this kit is not the greatest. On this, it's a little bit on the scuffed side. Then this is it just out of box. It kind of has a lot of folding and just, well, doesn't look too premium. Again, I do feel like this was, or these were always kits intended for a little bit of extra, well, work. So again, the Beam Tomahawk into the hand is a little bit on the awkward side. It's not the worst because it is lightweight. Now, I will mention one thing. I got it into the hand fairly fine like this, but then when I tried to add the beam effects onto it, it was pretty much impossible because you're just going to knock it out of the hand in one way or another. So attach the beams on before attaching it into the hand. Once you do that, this is what you get right here. And one thing that is definitely interesting is that Bandai does say a lot more in images than it actually does in words, because you take a look at the box and the manual, looking for a picture of this posed with the particular weapon, and this is the only picture, and it's the same on the box, just it being held in the hand. So yeah, that's all you're really going to get out of this, because it's not the most poseable kit around. This is that nice kind of green that does glow ever so slightly under blue light, probably a whole lot under black light. But yeah, you're not going to be posing this into too many kind of slashing poses. And the hand is a little bit on the weak side, but, you know, overall, not really too bad. I guess a lot of people probably not going to be posing it with this particular weapon. So when it's not in use, just get it popped out of the hand. Of course, be careful because that peg is very, very delicate. Remove the beam, and beam. And then this can be stored into the rear of the shield just like so. And I assume you can use the beams on the shield as well. So I kind of wish I didn't put them away. Let's try. Yeah, and in proper Char big old mobile suit fashion, you're actually able to leave the beams on it while it's a shield, which just makes so much sense. Using it to defend and attack Makes a lot more sense than having to go around and grab this. Well, so yeah, I will mention this is made out of 2 of the exact same half, probably to cut down on costs, and they don't hold together too well. So the next weapon we have in here is the Mega Beam Rifle. Now this is very, very, very simple. It's basically just 2 halves slapped together, so it does have a big seam line right down the middle and some supplementary aspects that you attach onto it. We do have some decals for on it. Again, they do have that little bit of a bit around the outside so you can't see them. And overall, it is just quite plain, really. It is like a big old no-grade weapon. The detailing is decent enough on it, so if you did actually detail it up, or at least just paint in some of the details, it would look a lot nicer, especially if you made the mag just kind of stand out a little bit from the actual weapon itself. It does have one moving part, however, which I find kind of weird, and that is this bipod right here that, well, it can swing forward, but it doesn't have the outward moving mechanism, so it's always like this. So that makes no sense. Like, why have this little aspect if it doesn't open outwards? It's strange. It's kind of like the weird little sub-arms underneath the front flaps. They're kind of just a bit on the vestigial side. So getting the rifle into the hand was more of an ordeal and a nightmare than I actually expected it to be. So basically it's just the usual case of it's kind of hard to get weapons into these old school perfect grade, master grade sized hands. Because it's soft plastic, it's a soft tab into a hard hole, and the fingers are a little bit funky, they can fall off, and overall it just is very difficult to do. This is also compounded with the fact that this is a giant rifle, and it's too long for this thing to hold onto, and it has 0 articulation in the arm and the wrist, which means it only attaches in one way, and one way only. If you're a slight degree off here, a slight degree off there, you are absolutely boned. But yeah, the way I ended up doing it is I just took off the hand, attached the tab into the rifle, which again, soft tab. Hard rifle, don't do this a lot or it will wear down. Wrap the fingers around it when you finally get it all sorted out. It's what makes the narrative Verka look like a god-made masterpiece, by the way. Then tried to get the wrist into the arm while the arm is detached so you can get it into the right position. Then attach the arm on while holding the fingers, holding the hand, holding the rifle so it doesn't fall out. And eventually I got it into this position right here. And this is the only position it can be in. It can't aim, it can't point it forward, it can't even really hold it up. It just hangs there, but where it does hang, it does look good. So again, this kit, a statue, without a doubt. So the last and final piece of equipment we have in here is the shield. Very basic, very hollow, same kind of cheap-ish plastic that shows folding and different kinds of issues all over the place. The detail is just kind of pressed into it. That is it. Around back, we've got some missiles down here. Very, very basic plastic backing with these little sections here, which were where the pegs went through. There is a little kind of riveting design on it, but no detail pushes through like we see on its back or anything like that. There's the sticker. There's a very obvious line between the parts, and overall, you know, it's kind of par for the course for the kit so far, and a little bit basic. Just rotation here at the attachment point. Oh yeah, and I forgot to reattach this back in after it fell apart the last time. There we go. Thankfully, getting the shield attached is pretty straightforward. There's a little bit of a tab hole cover right here you need to pop off. There's your hole. It's not kind of any kind of standard sized at all. Attaching this on, you just pop the peg into the hole and it holds on fairly well. Simple. However, it is worth mentioning though that the kind of posing options are very limited because the arm only rotates at that point right there, so you kind of get the shield at a weird angle no matter what way you try to put it. Like usually I like a shield around here, something like that, but the arm is at a funny angle. Try to put it back here, which is also nice, arm's at a funny angle. Again, it is a robot, so it doesn't really matter what way the arm is pointing, but it doesn't look the most aesthetic really. But yeah, that right there is what the Nightingale looks like fully loaded up, and I will mention that there is no options for getting this onto an action base. So as far as I know, maybe you could try to get onto a larger action base with one of those old school adapters, but more than likely you're going to have to leave it on its feet or kind of make something specific or custom to pop it up onto. I'm just going to leave it standing there on its feet. So finally now moving on to the articulation and, the build and the articulation, the build strength. So the weird thing is, stuff like that happens all of the time. Like the limbs just fall off. The legs at the hips and the arms at the shoulders being the worst offenders. Which is kind of funny because its weaknesses are its strengths and its strengths are its weaknesses. For example, again, another piece just fell off. But I just grabbed this by its handy dandy dick handle in order to just transport it across the room. And when you're holding onto it by this, it actually holds together solidly enough to fling it around the place, to move it around the place, no bother. If you're transferring it from display point A to display point B, you can do that. It's oddly strong in some places. It's just really a case of if you do kind of move the limbs or parts that it does just fall apart. Anything that has those really annoying little Reborn 100 joints. Besides that though, it's strong in its own way, but at the same time, horrendously weak. It's a funny thing. But yeah, there's not really much to say about articulation. These droop up and down like so. Still wish they could weight up like this, which would be a little bit more dynamic. They do have a bit of a rotation too, so you can angle them back or forward, I guess for some sky breaks and some extra speed. These don't move out of box. The shoulders are just kind of up and down like so. Rotation at the arms like that. The arms can move a little bit, but not much. The arms are those super articulated hands, which kind of works against them. And these can all move around ever so slightly, but not with a lot. As you can see, the waist kind of pivots on its own because it's not very strong. Again, this is the best part because you can lift it up by it, and the kicks aren't really anything much at all. Sure, it can actually kick its legs forward and back, but what they'll just end up doing is working their way out eventually. We have this little bit of a moving landing gear on back to hold it up when it's just standing there, and overall, yeah, this isn't something really for moving around. This is a thing for grabbing, getting up in your shelf, leaving there, and letting it look awesome. So anyway, that right there is it for the review. What can I say? I can't really rank this per se, can I? Okay, I will. It's silver tier. This is exactly what I would expect from Reborn 100. It's still kinda cool, but at the same time, it's kinda not cool. It's one of those things that's definitely a project kit. If you grab this, build it up, paint it, and throw it on your shelf, it will be one of the most awesome Gundam display pieces of all time. But that is it. If you're here for articulation or gimmicks or anything else besides looking good in one pose, you're not gonna find it. It does what it does and it does it well, but you will need to assist it to get further again. So yeah, even at the very basic, panel line it up and add on the stickers and it will look good. Give it some matte top coat or top coat of your choice, it will look great. Paint the entire thing and detail it up, of course it will look fantastic. It's got the basis to look awesome, and it still does look awesome. Anyway, as always, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to come back for more Gunpla reviews, and as always, I will see you next time. I can't end this video right here without the usual thanks, saying thank you so much for watching. This video and this channel would not be possible without each and every single one of you, including those of you who support me over on the channel memberships and on Patreon, including Abraxas, Caleb Engelhart, Go Little Rockstar, Joe, Org59061, Shadow Wolf 179, 10 Soldier YT, and Van Fawn.